February was an amazing month. The best month in the channel's history in terms of watch hours, views, subscribers gained, comments. It was a very successful month for me. I'm ecstatic. I'm excited. I'm very happy with the way February went, and I'm excited to bring this momentum into March. I have lots of big plans for March. But before I close the door on February, I gotta do the wrap up. I'm gonna talk about all the books I read in February and tell you what I thought about them. February 2025 was all about Alan Moore, one of the most prolific and successful comic book authors of all time. I read 3 of his graphic novels. I loved all of them. In total, in February, I read 3 graphic novels, 1 comic, 4 volumes of manga, and 2 books. Most of what I've read this month had pictures in it, and I'm ecstatic about it. I've realized on YouTube there are a lot of different niches. There is the manga niche, there is the booktube niche, there is the comic niche, but I haven't really come across a channel that talks about all of these things. And I'm definitely diversifying the things that I'm reading in 2025. There's going to be a lot of manga reviews, there's going to be a lot of graphic novel reviews, there's going to be a lot of comic reviews, a lot of book reviews, all the reviews for all the different types of reading materials. And I think that's going to be a good move for the channel. But let's talk about the Alan Moore graphic novels first. The first Alan Moore graphic novel I read was V for Vendetta. The premise of this is very familiar to most people because this is a very popular, very well-known graphic novel. We follow V, the mysterious vigilante known as V, and he is trying to overthrow a repressive, totalitarian, right-wing traditionalist government in the UK. And it is a wild ride. I remember watching the movie when it first came out years ago, and I loved the movie. And I wasn't expecting the graphic novel to be very different. But it was a very different story, especially the ending, especially the dynamic between Evie and V. I loved it. The graphic novel is not nearly as hopeful. It's a lot more stark. It's a lot more depressing. And the themes are a lot more far-reaching. The V for Vendetta movie is more of it's really like a stand-in for the America during the Patriot Act years. It's really a critique of the surveillance state. That's what the movie's about. But the graphic novel is so much more. The graphic novel for V for Vendetta is really about tyranny. It's really about liberty. It's about justice. It's about individuality. It's about anarchy. It's about self-sufficiency. It's about so many hot-button issues. V for Vendetta is truly timeless. I believe that if Alan Moore published this graphic novel in 2025, it would be even more popular. I think the message would resonate way stronger with the people of today than it did when this book first came out in the 1980s. This book was amazing. I loved the ending. I will say the highest highs of the movie are better than the highest highs of the graphic novel, but overall, the graphic novel is of a higher quality, and I see why a lot of people who read the graphic novel first don't like the movie, including Alan Moore, the author. He did not like the movie whatsoever. The second thing I read in February was a novel by Tana Flee titled Electric Forest. This was really dang good. Just under 300 pages, and the plot was very riveting. The premise of this book is we follow Magdala, and she is hideous, she is disabled, she lives in a futuristic society where everyone is attractive, everyone is happy. But she has this disability, and she has no friends, she doesn't have a fulfilling work life, and she is alone. She's a social pariah. Think The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but a woman, and that's kind of who you have to picture for Magdala. And then the plot takes a very interesting turn when she's offered a second chance on life. She will be given a new body, a perfect, beautiful, perfectly functional body, and in return, she has to do some espionage work. And the character development of our main character was quite interesting. She changes immensely when she gets a new body because now she is beautiful. Everyone thinks she's attractive. Everyone wants to be her friend. And it's kind of cool to see the character grow into this new body. And I love and also the espionage part is also quite interesting. The plot of this book takes some surprising twists and turns, particularly at the end. I did not see that twist coming. I loved this story. Up until the last 20% of it, it was just all right. But the final fifth of it really made this book worthwhile. Tana Flee's a very interesting author because in her heyday, she was very popular, she was very successful. She was almost a household name. But she stepped out of the limelight because she wanted to write the book that she wanted to write. She wanted to make art the way she wanted to make it. And consequently, she kind of vanished into obscurity. She passed away a few years ago. And she is definitely a hidden gem. She is a forgotten author. Online, anyone that has read Tana Flee, they talk so highly of her. Her writing is beautiful, lots of interesting words, very good dialogue, very beautiful passages in Electric Forest. I will definitely be reading some more Tana Flee in the future. The second graphic novel I read in February was Watchmen. This was pretty dang amazing. I enjoyed the story. I know in 2025, grim, dark, realistic superheroes is nothing new, but when this book came out, it was pretty earth-shattering. Alan Moore is truly one of the main pioneers of realistic, grim, dark superheroes. I'm sure you're familiar with the premise of Watchmen. The story starts off when a very popular former mass vigilante gets unalived, and we're trying to figure out who the killer is, and there's a grand conspiracy against all the former heroes. And underneath this plot, underneath what's actually happening, there's this great anxiety that all the former mass vigilantes are suffering from. Because there's actually now a real superhero in the setting. Mr. Manhattan is born, and now all these mass vigilantes have realized that they are obsolete because they're just normal people wearing a mask with issues. They all have traumas, they all have PTSD, they all entered into hero work for different reasons. But when Mr. Manhattan is created, the world's first real superhero, they don't have a place in the world anymore. They're trying to assimilate into regular society, and they're all struggling. They can't do it. It's hard to live a normal life, when you used to be a hero. You used to jump from rooftop to rooftop. You used to save the world. You used to fight bad guys. There's no place for these people. And we're trying to figure out this grand conspiracy while all these former mass vigilantes are trying to step back into that world, and they're a little rusty. They're past their best days. The story's a bit slow moving, but the climax is very riveting. I watched the movie. A lot of people watched the movie, and I just want to tell you, even if you watch the movie, the graphic novel will have a lot of surprises for you. Particularly the ending. The ending of the graphic novel is much different than the movie. The characters are a lot more dynamic and well-rounded. In the movie, there's not enough time to do characterization in movies for the most part. That's why books are generally superior when it comes to crafting memorable, unique characters. But really, in the graphic novel adaptation, all the characters are easy to empathize with. They all have their different weaknesses. They all have their different traumas, and you feel for them. Even the most morally despicable characters in the graphic novel, you kind of can see where they're coming from. And you feel bad for them when they struggle, and you feel good for them when they succeed. I really love Watchmen. I love the characters. I love the central messages. I love the themes and the ending. The ending was top-notch. But perhaps my favorite graphic novel of February was another book from Alan Moore, From Hell. This is Alan Moore doing a Jack the Ripper story. I loved it. This graphic novel really had everything that I love. There's philosophy, there's the occult, there's religious illusions, there is architecture, there's history, there's a serial killer tracking down people, doing heinous things. And I would say the climax of the story is perhaps 75% through the graphic novel, and the last 25% is all falling action, and I love a prolonged falling action sequence. I loved what this graphic novel was all about. This is definitely the least known out of the three that I've talked about, the three graphic novels from Alan Moore, but From Hell, in my opinion, is the best of them. It is not for everybody, though. This is grittier than Watchmen and V for Vendetta. It is darker, it is more depressing, the subject matter is a lot more triggering, but I love the characters. Even Jack the Ripper was a very compelling character. I love the women that Jack the Ripper is hunting down. They're very easy to root for. And if you're familiar with history, bad things happen to them. Alan Moore does a very interesting twist on Jack the Ripper. I love the occult. I love creepy things. I love secret societies. I love Freemasonry. I love architecture. This graphic novel was tailor-made for my specific taste. And I'm going to talk about this very soon. There's going to be a review video for all three of these graphic novels in the next month and a half. They're going to be uploaded to the channel because I want to talk about all of them because a lot of booktubers, they're not reading graphic novels, particularly ones from Alan Moore, and I want to kind of be one of the first people to like dip my toes into that world because comic books, I think they're my thing. I think they're going to be one of my things now. Graphic novels are essentially just many issues of comics that are put into one volume, but I did read one small comic, a regular sized comic called Road of Bones, and it was okay. It was satisfactory. It was basic. It follows a group of escaped inmates who are escaping from one of the gulags in the Soviet Union. They are trekking through the Siberian wasteland. Lots of horrible things are happening to them. They are trying to survive against the elements. They're facing starvation. They're facing, conflict amongst themselves. This story is hopeless. It is gritty. It is disturbing. I love the ending, but I must say that the emotional highs and lows didn't really hit me. I didn't feel like I had enough time to really get to know the characters to be invested in what was happening to them. But I do think the twist at the end was intriguing. This comic is on Kindle Unlimited. Give it a try if it's your type of thing, but it's pretty grotesque. There's some pretty gross scenes in there. The final book I finished in February was Adrift in Current, Clean and Clear by Seanan McGuire. This is the 10th installment in her Wayward Children series. I have a love-hate relationship with this series. I love the first 5, and I've had a very mixed reaction to the last 5 in the series. Adrift in Current, Clean and Clear is a standalone. You don't need to read this series in order. Every odd number installment follows one narrative, and every even numbered installment is a standalone. Adrift in Currents, Clean and Clear had some beautiful writing. I liked the characters. I love the world building. Seanan McGuire really thrives when it comes to world building. She's created a lot of very interesting, compelling settings. But I must say, with every installment of this series, the characters are growing more or less and less compelling. And that's a damn shame, because I really feel like this series might be on a downward trajectory, and that makes me sad. Adrift in Currents, Clean and Clear, the pacing was I found the main character to be very whiny. I found like the messaging and the preaching from Seanan McGuire was a little bit more annoying, a little bit more grating in this book. But I loved the bittersweet ending. I must say that the ending was a bit rushed. The climax was not very climatic, and there was not really a sense of catharsis. And that's a shame because I'm not going to get the next installment in this series for another year. And these are novellas. You read them in less than 4 hours, and then you're just left waiting for a year. And I hate that. I may not continue on with the series, but most likely I'm just going to be taking a few years off of the Wayward Children, and then perhaps I'll return to it when I know the author has finished it up, because novellas, you can read a novella in a day. And if I have to read 6 or 7 installments in a week and then just be done with this series, I think that'd be the best way to consume these books, because I hate waiting every year for 200 pages of literature. It's always unfortunate when you start to outgrow a series, and I think that just might be the case when it comes to The Wayward Children. On the final day of February, I read 4 volumes of manga, one one-shot called Love Letter, and 3 volumes of The Flowers of Evil. I will talk more about The Flowers of Evil by Shuzo Oshimi later. It is amazing, it is depressing. I'll be finishing this series probably tomorrow. It's 11 volumes. I've read 3 of them in one day. I read 5 of them today. I'm finishing the rest tomorrow. It's really good stuff. Love Letter, though. This manga was a bit of a disappointment. I was on Reddit and I was like looking up really good one-shot mangas, and this one came up a few times, so I gave it a try. The premise is interesting. We follow a spirit, and in the setting of this manga, spirits before they are born, they kind of are put into a raffle to see who's going to be their parents. They kind of are choosing their life before they are born. And we follow a spirit that doesn't want to be born into an affluent family. They have like a love at first sight type of like situation with this one young lady who's going to be a teen mom. And the spirit wants to be born to her. The spirit goes through hardships. It's very depressing. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. This spirit chooses to be born into a very suboptimal life, and it's very depressing. And this manga does a very good job at showing how children, especially young children, love their parents no matter what. They have nothing to compare their parents to. they're just happy to be alive. They're just happy to be around you. And when parents don't do right by their children, especially as a parent, it's very hard to read. I read this manga in less than 45 minutes. I had a very strong emotional reaction to it. At first, I was very enraged. I was very upset. I did not like it. This manga did not sit right with me. But as I've thought more about it over the last 2 days, I've realized what the author was going for, and I get it. This manga is quite thought provoking. It'll make you feel things. It'll definitely get an emotional reaction out of you. It was something special, but I don't think I was in the right headspace to read it, if I'm being honest. Really good, but not my sort of story. I would have read more books in February, but Lonesome Dove has really been taking up most of my reading time. It is over 900 pages. Me and my friends are reading it for our book club, and I'll be finishing this in the first part of March. But this is not a book you could binge. You cannot speed through Lonesome Dove. It is not that type of story. It is a very slow-moving, glacially paced story. It's all about characterization. It's all about dialogue. It's all about the atmosphere and the setting. It is so slow-moving. It is a masterpiece. I'm sure it'll end up being my book of the month for March, but it's one of the main reasons why I didn't get too much reading done in the month of February. Picking the book of the month for February was kind of difficult because if I finished Lonesome Dove, it would be Lonesome Dove hands down. Lonesome Dove will most definitely be in my top 10 favorite books of all time by the time I finish it, but I won't be finishing it for a few more days. I really liked Electric Forest by Tana Flee. It was a masterpiece, and I had very high hopes for this book, and it did reach my expectations. It was as good as I was hoping it was going to be. But I think the main surprise for me for February was how much I loved the graphic novels that I read. So I'm going to pick From Hell by Alan Moore as my book of the month. I love the occult. I love serial killer stories. I love dark subject matter. I love the artwork in this graphic novel. So From Hell by Alan Moore is my book of the month for February 2025. February was a pretty dang good month. A very successful month analytically. Reading, I could have read more, but March is going to be an amazing month. We got some Stephen King on the schedule. We're finishing Lonesome Dove. We're finishing The Flowers of Evil. We're probably going to finish several other books. It's going to be a very interesting month. I got some book discussion videos planned for you guys, and I can't wait to see how good a month March is going to be, because February was pretty damn amazing, but March is going to be even better. I'm pretty confident about that.